Good evening. I'd like to open.
Turn on your mic.
Welcome to the West Jordan Board of Adjustments meeting, June 11th, 2024. Board members here this evening, Mike Wilson, and I'm having a brain cramp. August, got it here. Augustina Avalos, okay. And then Bill Heiner, chairman. Our first order of business, I believe, will be to have a motion for, we do that? I'm on the wrong one. Too many things in front of me here. Okay, I'm sorry. Item 1, oath of office for a reappointed board member, Avalos. We'll turn the time over
Thank you,
for
Chair
you for
Heiner.
that.
I appreciate that. I'm excited to be here tonight to swear in. You're gonna have to correct me. Augusta,
It's Augustine or
Augustine
yeah.
Avalos. So is the name on here correct? Okay, if you want to come up, we're gonna swear you in for your second term. And I'll just have you stand right over here in front of me.
Okay.
And raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Okay.
I state your name,
I, Augustine Avalos,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I'll support, obey, and defend
that I'll support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and that I'll discharge the duties
and that I'll discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm going to have you step over here and sign this. for me real quick. Normally, I would turn the time over to Mayor Burton, but he's not here tonight. He's not feeling well, unfortunately. So I'm going to give you this little pin that he likes to give out. And then I'm going to ask you to sign here your name there on the top line. Here, sorry. Now try. And I will get you a copy of that and get one to Julie as well.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Congratulations. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion? Yeah,
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
And I will second that.
motion has been made by Board Member Wilson and seconded by Board Member Avalos. And so we'll move on to our next item. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. I'll turn the time over to our Assistant Attorney and
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I've met all of you, at least in January for Mike and Bill, but definitely tonight, Augustine, I don't know that we had met before, but my name is Patrick Boyce, and I'm an Assistant City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office for the City of West Jordan. And one of my assignments is to aid the Board of Adjustment in kind of fulfilling and bringing about their duties. One of the things that we do on the Board of Adjustment is grant variances. And so I thought it would be nice, since we're here, we're all dressed up. There's nothing really else on the agenda, but it would be a good opportunity to kind of visit some of the legal standards that go into the variance process. It gives us an opportunity to discuss things in hypothetical situations without really having decisions that need to be made tonight. Sometimes it can be hard, I think, especially with the Board of Adjustment, because really it's not a board that meets very frequently. And so, you know, the Planning Commission meets so regularly, the standards and process and protocols are so common and known that it just becomes very familiar. We meet so infrequently that I think it's just a good idea to have a minute to discuss situations that can come up, to keep obviously the board's decisions in line with the law and make sure that the variances and decisions that are granted don't get challenged and overturned by a district court later on. So that's kind of the steps. So again, just kind of granting variances. It says there's 3 different scenarios, but I actually added a 4th that was late. So there's 4 different fact patterns that I've gone ahead and kind of created, meant to highlight just different situations that we might find ourselves in. These are completely made up, right? Names have been changed to protect the innocent, so to speak. But I did pull similar facts from state case law, as well as some situations that we've had come before this body. And so these are situations that are not wholly unrealistic. These are things that actually may occur quite frequently. You should have in front of you a couple of documents. One has, you know, kind of the different scenarios listed on it. And then the second is kind of like a little flow chart here. And I put the flow chart together just to kind of help the thought process and to help vocalize and identify some of the key components that we need to analyze, right? So with the first scenario, Larry, if we could go to that one. So this is a developer who's purchased a 10-acre piece of land within the city of West Jordan. Part of the land had previously been a farm. The city council has rezoned the parcel into an R18 zone. The developer would like to fit as many homes as possible on the land, and initially they planned to construct 50 homes on the 10 acres. However, the city council has required a 1-acre park to be built in the center of the development. The developer comes to the Board of Adjustment asking for a variance on minimum lot sizes to allow for 50 homes to still be built on the 9 acres. The developer has already run utilities for these 50 homes. So if this situation comes before the Board of Adjustment, again, I think it's helpful to, maybe we just want to walk through the flow chart kind of at the outset just to get a feel for the contents of it. But I think that the first and foremost thing that we need to address is whether or not the procedural steps were taken, right? Was an application completed, submitted properly, and was the fee paid, right? So Julie, you know, and the Community Development Department will receive these applications, but ensuring that the proper fees are paid, that the application is signed or that it's appropriately submitted, I think is just kind of an easy initial step, right? If paperwork isn't completed properly, you know, the board can just kick it back, right? Decline it, kick it back, let it be what it will. So that's kind of the first step that I would suggest that the board consider. The second step there, and you'll see, like, you know, if no, stop, if yes, continue. So there's an ongoing kind of process to this. So if the application was submitted properly, you know, will literal enforcement of the ordinance cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant? This is kind of where it starts to get a little bit vague, right? So on the right side of the flow chart, I included kind of some general thoughts to look at, right? So for this one, strict enforcement would impose a hardship above that which would be suffered by the general public. an unreasonable hardship exists where no reasonable use can be made of the property without a variance. So I guess maybe we'll just start with that one on this one. Yeah, you know, and you'll see on your other sheet, I've kind of queued up some questions just to kind of help the conversation along, but is a variance even needed in this situation number one? Any thoughts?
So I feel like, I guess the variance is needed if something needs to be changed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what I'm understanding. So anything that needs to be changed, a variance needs to be submitted, whether or not it's going to be approved or not, right?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, any other thoughts from the board on that point? So this is, you know, if anything needs to be changed, that would qualify for a quote unquote variance. I don't know, Mike or Bill, any thoughts on that?
My thought is, did he know going in that they were going to, require the park in the middle of things to, you know, to dilute the amount of lots he was getting? You know, going
Okay.
in, that would be,
Sure.
create a hardship for him there, I guess.
Which I would assume that he would have done his due diligence and he should have known that, right? 10 acres, 1 acre, you got to do this. So I think they would be asking for a variance because they want to fit the 50 homes within the 9 acres. So they want to know if they can get away with it, basically.
Sure. Yeah, they're just, hey, Board of Adjustment, help me out. You know, I need to fit more homes in this zone. Make an exception for me on this case, right? Mike, any thoughts on just whether or not a variance is even needed?
My first thought just goes along with, it says the city council has rezoned the parcel into that R18 zone. And to me, the point of question would be, when was the rezoning taking place? Before or after the purchase? And before or after the planning of the 50 homes? And then I think my second question would be, have they applied to rezone into a different zone that would allow smaller lot sizes before we go into the variance for this zone?
Yeah, and I think those are good thought process to start going through. I think it goes into kind of the second question that's on there. You know, what is the unusual or unreasonable hardship, right? What are we talking about here? And we'll come back to this at kind of towards the end, but when we talk about this, be as specific as we can. Sometimes I think when we analyze legal situations, we don't want to call a spade a spade. And we just beat around the bush when really we can go straight to it, right? What is the hardship?
I guess that would have to be defined and defended by the applicant, right?
Well, in your opinion, I mean, yeah, it's their burden. It's their burden to prove the elements of this. You know, from the developer's standpoint, he's saying, hey, I want 50 homes on this development. I can't fit 50 homes because 50 homes is going to essentially come to 4,700 square feet per lot. And an R18 zone, Larry, requires how many? 8,000, yeah.
8,000.
Right, so we're going from 8,000 square feet to 4,700 square feet. And the developer's saying, I can't do that. I can't fit 50 homes. And unless you allow me to reduce my lot size by almost half. And so the developer's saying, hey, this is my hardship. See how hard that is? I want 50. But if I follow through with the zone that the council's approved, I'm only able to probably get like 25. It's cutting my houses in half. And they come to you and they say, don't we need housing, Board of Adjustment? Don't we need more houses? Can't you help me out? What are your thoughts?
Too bad, so sad.
It sounds like in this case, the hardship would be a financial, that he can't put as many homes there to sell as he would like. And I'm not sure a financial burden is a correct one.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's actually the third step. Just write down, was the hardship created by the owner, or is the hardship economic in nature? If it, you know, if yes, then stop. That one's kind of a different one. It's a tricky wording on that one. If the hardship's created by the property owner, or if the hardship is economic in nature, stop, right? This fact pattern is a little, probably a rude one to have kicked things off with. It's not your job to provide housing, right? It's not your job. Board of Adjustment doesn't determine affordable housing. Not real, you know, not something you need to consider. The Board of Adjustment's job isn't to, you know, decide what it should have been zoned as. The Board of Adjustment's job isn't to try and correct what the council has entered into, maybe on a development agreement with the developer. It's not the Board of Adjustment's job. They've come requesting a variance from the law, an adjustment, an exception be made. And what they're requesting is something that really is within their control. Who decides how many lots are developed on that 10-acre piece of land? Essentially the developer, right? So long as it fits within the R18 zone, they can decide how many. It can be up to 8,000 square feet, or a minimum size of 8,000 square feet, but they can put fewer. They can do 10 or 12,000 square foot. They can put 12. They could put 1 acre lots on that parcel, and it's their choice not to. So I think sometimes this is a tricky one, because oftentimes applicants will bring situations to the Board of Adjustment that are not Board of Adjustment issues. And they will request things that are not really within the Board of Adjustment's sphere, so to speak, or authority, maybe even. You know, again, and I put that kind of on the additional questions right there. You know, is it really that big of a deal if lots are reduced to 4,700 square feet? I put 5,000, but it is, I think, 8 on these ones. From 8,000 square feet to 4,700 square feet, that's a huge jump, right? We're talking about half the size. We are really making a big jump there. Is the fact that housing is so expensive and that we need more homes built a consideration? It's not. It's not. Those are not something that the Board of Adjustment really considers, or that the law asks that the Board of Adjustment consider as part of the deliberation on these types of cases. So again, you know, identifying what the hardship is key in this process. Identifying who created the hardship and identifying whether it's economic, I think, are great starting points for analyzing those sorts of things. So great. Larry, let's move on to fact pattern number 2. Kind of a similar issue. I think you guys were maybe reading ahead here. A property owner purchased a 0.67 acre parcel of land in the RR40 zone. The RR40 zone requires that lots be at least an acre in order to be developed for a single-family home. The property owner knew of the restriction when the property was purchased. The property owner now seeks a variance from the Board of Adjustment to allow for a 10,000 square foot single-family home to be constructed on the parcel. So again, kind of on this one, I guess, you know, we'll say, yeah, sure, application was completed, the fee was paid, completely paid, everything's great. You know, what is the hardship? Well, the hardship is that, you know, this property owner owns a parcel of land that's, you know, 0.33 acres too small to under the zone that it's currently zoned in. So they're wanting a variance from the zone to build their dream home that they've always wanted to live in West Jordan and have a home with a wraparound porch and white picket fence and You can help them make their dream come true. Did the owner purchase, or I'm sorry, did the owner create the hardship though?
Absolutely. I mean, he knew going in that he wasn't gonna, he knew going in he was gonna ask for a variance.
Yeah, yeah,
Because-
maybe,
because
but
the-
what is the hardship though?
Well, his hardship, well, he built land that he can't really build anything on.
No,
He bought land.
he purchased the land, but it was already 0.67. Did he create the problem? Did he create the small lot?
No, I see what you're going. So basically, we have a parcel there that doesn't fit into that zone. So
Right.
it's a city problem and that we should probably be accommodating somehow.
Okay,
I see what you're saying.
yeah, he didn't subdivide it. He didn't make it too small. Um,
What
Yeah.
happened there?
We have to back up our decision with other properties around the neighborhood that have been, that we've done the same thing with or has been approved.
yeah, is this an economic hardship alone? The hardship is that a home can't be built, single-family house can't be built on that small of a lot. Is that an economic hardship? I would say it's not. It's not really. It's
Well,
a use.
I
you
would
know.
say it's not because if you bought this knowing that you can't build, even though obviously the city created this problem because what are we doing with a 0.67 acre parcel?
Right.
We're
Right.
literally saying it's just sitting there, you can't do anything with it.
Yeah,
But this person knew,
well, it's not that they can't do anything with it. What can't they do with it?
build a house.
There you go. It's not that they can't make some other use potentially of it. They just can't build a house, right? So the hardship, again, being very specific, the hardship is I can't build a house. Not that I can't use it at all, which we will get into later. Is literal enforcement, this is kind of the fourth step down on the flow chart, is literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use regulations? And this is where Larry is awesome to have in these meetings. Larry, the RR40 zone is kind of I don't know how many of them we even have anymore really around, but what is the purpose of the RR40? And why is it?
No, we actually, between RR40 and any rural residential zone, we have about 675 acres
Yep.
in the cities. It was all done chiefly in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We haven't done any for a long time because we're the states. But the rural residential zone was created as not an agricultural zone, but a zone where people could have animal rights, and live in a rural residential type development, larger lots where if they wanted to have animals, they could, as opposed to a single family zone where we do allow some animals currently in single family, chickens and stuff, but you can have horses in a rural residential zone. So it kind of harkens back to the roots of West Jordan or any community. It was largely agrarian. They generally people move, years ago when West Jordan was at the edge or the leading edge of, uh, development from Salt Lake City. People wanted to move out here because they could be amongst the farms and didn't really have to be a farmer. They could play a farmer, that kind of thing. So that's the purpose of it is, a larger lot where people can practice some, animal husbandry type practices.
So you're saying with these lots, you can have like a couple of arenas and horses. And
No, it's based on, the lot size. We have animal points. You can only have so many animals. So you're not, the last thing you want on a 1 acre lot is 40 horses. It's usually, I think, 1 horse per 17,000 square
Right.
feet.
I know we're very generous here. I have a brother that lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and he's just floored how our laws over here are a little bit different on
Yeah.
animal rights.
Yeah. So that's, again, to this question, what is the general purpose of the RR40 zone? The general purpose of the RR40 zone is to provide a spot where people can have a home and animals, right? And we're talking large animals, cattle, horses, maybe goats, I don't know, llamas, whatever. Um,
There's
I,
these one-offs that are not 1 acre that are present these challenges, right?
yeah, and I think that's the issue is that the zoning code was put in place to say, if you're gonna live with large agricultural animals, you gotta have an acre. Yeah, at least a half acre for some of these animals to be safe, you know, graze or be fed or move around and things. And so you know, council and, you know, community development said for this particular zone, the reason why we require an acre is because of the nature of the zone itself, right? And how big of a home does this applicant want to place on that property? Yeah, 10,000 square feet is a big home. They want a big home on a relatively smaller lot. It's almost half, you know, of what it should be. Um, you know, we need to be clear on that particular issue. And I think, you know, this particular step, obviously we've got our questions. Are there special circumstances that apply to this property, but not others in the RR40 zone? Well, no, not really. All RR40 zone properties have the same requirements. You've got to have an acre. We're not aware of any natural topographical issues with this parcel. 0.67 of just flat land. But it comes down to this fourth step there, whether literal enforcement is necessary to meet the requirements of the law. And I think it is in this case, you know, from my opinion. This fact pattern is actually based off of a similar situation that's a common case in the state of Utah from Spanish Fork area where they had a similar situation, right? Almost identical. And the appeals court, you know, Supreme Court upheld or overturned the Board of Adjustment granting a variance in that particular case for a few different reasons. But I think in large extent because the board overlooked the specific general requirements of the zone itself, right? Sometimes this type of a zone is a buffer between just agricultural land and residential neighborhoods. And so there are a bunch of considerations kind of when we come into this type of a situation. So anyway,
So we do have
yeah.
half-acre lots that we allow large animals. Is that just a different zone?
Yeah, so we have our 40 zone, then we have our 20 zone, which is our half acre lot truly isn't a half acre, it's 20,000 square feet. And the R40 is truly not an acre, it's 40,000 square feet. And the reason for that is that years ago, we ran into a lot of non-conforming issues with lots were not quite an acre because of road takings and sidewalk and things like that. And so the council just chose to call 40,000 square feet a 40,000 RR40 rather than a RR1. It used to be called or RR.5 because of those issues. So it's good to clean up that's an easier way to eliminate a lot of the non-conforming. And what non-conforming means is that the city has put a zone on property, but the property doesn't quite meet all of the requirements of the zone. So the city council chose to deal with the issue that way rather than have a bunch of properties non-conforming, which has a whole host of issues that probably is for another training that Patrick will do in the future. And I'm not saying all RR1 zone or RR40 lots are non-conforming because they're not, but a large number of them were. And so
I guess, in the beginning, I thought, okay, if we're clearly following, what the ordinance says, then, well, no, you can't because it needs to be 1 acre. But, you opened up the can of worms for me and you said, who really created this issue by having a 0.67 acre in this zone?
Yeah.
And it falls on the city's lap. So,
Well, the city doesn't subdivide the parcels though, right? And so that's kind of something to be aware of as well. A homeowner can own 2 acres of land and subdivide one out to a smaller lot size that doesn't allow for construction of a home. But there again, that's that last question on scenario number 2. Without a variance, would the property owner be deprived of the use of their land? Not entirely. Lease it out for grazing for the neighbor. Have maybe a stable or some other, construction there that would allow, and fit in with the nature of the neighborhood that's there. So it's not to say that they would lose all use of the property, but just residential use would not fit based on
their intended use, but they knew that
Yeah.
coming in.
they knew that coming
Yeah.
in. Yeah, kind of an interesting situation. So. No? Yeah, big house. Big house.
This may be a funny question.
Yeah.
With it, but in that example that you mentioned, you said that the courts overturned it. Who was it that brought it to the court after the board decision?
The neighbors. Yeah, the neighbors. I mean, imagine, I mean, a 10,000 square foot home is, if it's, 2,000, or if it's 2 stories and it's stacked on top of each other, it's got a 5,000 square foot footprint. It's got driveways, it's got yardage around it and things like that. There's setbacks that need to be, satisfied. It's a big construction. And so what happened in the case that I'm referencing, and I can email it to you, it's a great read, actually, is that the neighbors were unhappy. They did not want a home built on that small of a lot in their rural residential neighborhood. They wanted the city to enforce strictly the zoning requirements. And when the Board of Adjustment did not and granted the variance, they essentially appealed it and took it up through the court process. And I'm pretty certain it went all the way to the Supreme Court for a decision. So that's how it made it there. The cases can get through the courts on a variety of different kind of ways. The applicant can appeal your decisions, up. The affected resident, neighbors can appeal it going up. There's a very limited situation where I've heard of a city challenging the Board of Adjustment and appealing the decision that's gone up, because believe it or not, all elected officials may not agree with the decisions that you make. But your decisions are yours and you're put in place to make those, right? You're appointed specifically to exercise the powers that have been given. So it's an interesting dynamic, to be sure.
Yeah, I could see how if it was denied, the petitioner would want to take it to the court. So I was just curious if there's anything that would need to be our consideration for others in considering that scenario.
We can talk about it at the very end. I've got some slides that I think would help kind of that thought process as to what you're looking at there. So, yeah. So number 3, a property owner purchased a home near a small ravine. The zone is R110. The homeowner has recently agreed to bring their mother-in-law into the home to live with the family. The only available room in the home is adjacent to the master bedroom. The homeowner is beyond eager to build an ADU behind his home for the mother-in-law. However, due to the ravine, the homeowner would need to install costly pilings to support the structure if built in the rear of the property. He has come to the Board of Adjustment requesting a variance to allow him to build the ADU on the side yard. If permitted, the ADU would be built 4 feet from the property line. City code presently requires a minimum of 8 feet. So, think we can all appreciate his plight. Based on sympathy alone, grant the man his variance, get the mother-in-law out. But again, not our concern, really. We follow the law. Let's kind of go through things. Application submitted, fee paid, right, done. Will literal enforcement cause an unreasonable hardship? He'd have to build it in the back. There's a ravine. I mean, it is a hardship. He's going to have to install these expensive pilings. Is the hardship purely economic? Well, I don't know if it's purely economic. It's more expensive. Not to say that he couldn't do it. It's more expensive. I don't know. Is literal enforcement necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use regulations? I don't know, maybe not. Let's get down to this fifth one, though. I think this one's where it starts to get fun on this. Are there special circumstances attached to this property that generally do not apply to other properties in the same zone? What's different about this property in an R110 that is not present on all other R110s, maybe?
Ravine.
The ravine. Yeah, the ravine is different, right? So yeah, there is something different about this one. And I think that's where we start being specific about these considerations. Is granting the variance essential to the enjoyment of a substantial property right enjoyed by others in the same zone? Well, but for the ravine, he'd just put it in his backyard, right? No pilings are necessary. Everybody else that has an R110 can build it in their backyard if they don't have a ravine. No problems at all. So I think that these are some of those concerns and facts that we want to kind of pull out and point to as we start going through here. Will granting the variance affect the general plan? It doesn't seem to. ADUs are allowed in an R110 and things. Is granting the variance in the public interest? Well, you'd have to find some public interest, definitely in the homeowner's interest, but we're talking about public interest here. But you'll see on kind of your question sheet, I've queued up a few things. Would discussion around this issue be any different if instead of a mother-in-law, we were dealing with a family who simply wanted a rental unit?
No different.
Correct. Yeah. This is where we have to kind of separate that emotional pull, right? I mean, people come in and they've got a great story. You got to have a great story to come ask for a variance.
If he drags his mother-in-law in with him. why?
Yeah. Hopefully the mother-in-law doesn't tune in to the board meetings and things. Yeah.
We're in trouble if that happens.
I know. But if they come in and say, hey, I'm trying to make a buck and I want you to grant me a variance, there should be no distaste or preference one for the other, right? The ravine is still there. The legal requirements of the request are the concern. It's tough, though, to separate emotion and things from this. It's kind of like the first scenario where the guy comes in and says, hey, I'm trying to build houses, for our kids and grandkids here. Don't we need affordable housing? Isn't it time that you find members of the Board of Adjustment did something about the housing crisis in this state? It's a purely emotional plea, not based on the facts or the law that we're entitled to consider. So yeah, kind of similar with that one.
We're very lucky because we have Larry here to kind of keep us on track with those emotions.
Yes. What a tremendous resource. I think we talked about questions 2 and 3 on that scenario 3. Are the purposes of the general plan affected? It wouldn't seem so on something like this. You know, I think it comes down to some of these questions about, you know, whether or not you feel like the pilings, um, and the cost of them are the main issue, right? Are we saying like, hey, this dude just doesn't want to spend $300? You know, are we talking about $50,000? I mean, it says it's a small ravine. You know, I don't know. Is it just a gentle slope? Is it a 20-foot drop off the back? Like, what are we actually talking about when it comes to this? I think looking at some of those facts, I think looking at maybe some of the surrounding properties as well is probably, you know, necessary to do. You know, looking at whether or not, you know, this is going to be a major impact on the neighboring properties. We're talking about building it on the side yard. You know, 4 feet is pretty close to the neighboring property line. You know, is the neighboring property a half acre away? You know, is there 20,000 or yeah, 20,000 feet between the property line and the neighbor's home? I think there's some considerations there.
Did the neighbors show up with pitchforks?
Yeah,
That sort
yeah.
of thing.
I
too,
mean,
so
I mean,
we-
are they
we
voicing
have to
opinions?
Consider that for sure.
Well, actually, it's not part of the legal
Public
requirements.
clamor, but
Yeah.
still, it enjoyment of your property.
Well, I think we're talking really about the enjoyment of property rights for the applicant.
Well, and we also have ADU requirements,
We do.
so they have to follow those as well.
Correct. Yep, correct. And so I don't know, Larry, have we had much ADU requests that have come through your department or has anything been, maybe you can just give us some flavor of what ADUs look like in the city?
We've actually in the last year done a number of ADUs, but nothing that, they all are built to the regulations of the city. You know, the one thing I want to assure the Board of Adjustment is we'll never set you up.
Yeah.
We won't bring an application to you unless we feel that it meets all the tests of hardship for a variance. We don't say, well, okay, you got a case, come in and pitch your case. No, they have to first prove it to us as staff before we that's not approvable. And so the only way something you'd ever be brought to you with a recommendation of denial is if we have told them that we're not going to recommend that the Board of Adjustment approve this because as Patrick said, you know, obviously the one in Spanish Fork sounds like it took a long route to get overturned, but we don't want that. You know, we don't want the whole neighborhood, you know, coming upset with the city because they feel like, well, somebody got something that we didn't, you know, and they're not following the rules because we live by the rule of law here, you know, and so anything a variance is just an exception to the rule of law that's based upon a hardship. Now, if you do something like they did in Spanish Fork, then you, in essence, are becoming a legislative body and saying that it's okay for you to do this because we say it is, when really that's not your role. You know, that's the city council's role. So,
Those are great. Some of these fact patterns are made just out of thin air, right? You could serve on the Board of Adjustment for 30 years and probably not see a single one of these really pop up as it's presented. They're mainly meant to like highlight potential pitfalls and issues. But we are unique. I was at a conference a while ago. We are one of the few cities that has a board. comprised of multiple members. A lot of cities just have one person that they'll send these sorts of appeals to, and that's it. But we're unique, and I think it's a great thing to have multiple people involved. So yeah, it just is something that adds just a little different aspect to kind of our processes and things. So anyway, Larry, number 4, let's so a property owner has subdivided his land to make 2 commercial properties. He now wants a variance, allowing a driveway to be closer to the corner than city ordinance would allow. If the properties had not been subdivided, there would be no need for a variance. So again, this kind of goes back to the first one. You guys have been all over this one, but who created the hardship, right? Where did the hardship come from?
The landowner.
Landowner. Yeah, landowner created the hardship, right? You create the issue, kind of precludes you from a variance. We're not granting variances for people who are creating the issues that they're then seeking, essentially the board or the city to rectify. Where can the board find a solution for the owner? This is kind of a trick question. I won't even go into that one, but it's not, not the board's job to find those solutions. It's landowner created, landowner, you find a solution, for your mess that you've kind of created at this point, not the Board of Adjustment's job to find alternatives or options or solutions to those sorts of things. So
I have a question about
Yeah.
that.
Augustine.
When properties want to be subdivided,
Yeah.
the applications that we get, do they come with like a game plan of how this property is supposed to be used? Like in this case, with a drawing of this is, I want to put the driveway over here. And do we advise or do we give any sort of information about, hey, okay, if this is what you're going to do, this is what that means?
Yeah, Larry, do you want to talk to that at all? Is property comes in all shapes and sizes, sometimes because of the property owner and sometimes not. But
Well, if a subdivision or if a lot split, say in this case, comes to us and we have minimum standards, in the zoning ordinance, minimum frontage, that type of thing. And if I want to make a lot that's this wide, and then I want to leave a really weird triangular piece and have to put a weird subdivision that's right on the corner of another street, so it's going to be a safety issue, we would never approve that. Our engineering department looks at them, and so they're all looked at from a lot of different regulations. Planning, we look at it from minimum lot size, frontages. If you build a building, can you meet setbacks at a certain frontage? That type of thing. Our engineering will look at the safety of the access to the public street. And so we don't, and there are some minimum lot layout requirements. We just don't let people do goofy things with lots just so they can sell a piece of property. Has to be serviceable, that type of thing. So it's looked at by many different people before it's approved. So, yeah, but shame on the city if they approve something that didn't meet the rules, that's bad on the city, and the city should never approve a lot that immediately needs a variance to be usable. That's just not good government,
I think in this case, I would imagine that, he wanted 2 commercial properties subdivided, submitted it, it was granted, and then came back and said, oh, I actually want to put the driveway over here. Well, you can't do that, right? Had it been submitted initially with the application to subdivide the property, I'm assuming that would have been flagged and like, okay, FYI, you can't do that, but.
And this one too is kind of a tricky one. I did a ride along with our fire department, which was fantastic. West Jordan Fire is tremendous. But responding to calls with them and moving through the streets with their trucks and watching how they navigate things. I think sometimes people think, well, if we just all lived in cul-de-sacs, that would be great. It would be great until we needed to call fire. And in a situation like this even, it's tough because, you know, an ingress egress into a commercial parcel, you know, it would be nice to come to the city and say, yeah, you know, maybe we overlooked it or something happened here. Let's go with it. But on the fifth or sixth or seventh accident coming in or out of the parcel that kind of were creating an ongoing issues, there's safety concerns that I think sometimes get overlooked in a lot of the planning that goes on in the way that streets are designed and these neighborhoods and things. But we've got to have an ability for first responders to service, you know, the residents and respond as needed. Make sure that roads are safe. So, Larry, let's go to the next one. I think this one's maybe animated here at some point. Try it again. So again, kind of just general standards. What are the unreasonable or unusual hardship, if any? Make sure that we identify it. Was the hardship created by the landowner? Identify it. Is literal enforcement necessary to ensure the purpose of the land use laws? Understanding the purpose is important. What are the special circumstances, you know, that apply to this parcel that maybe don't apply to another parcel? You know, and if the Board of Adjustment denies the request, will the property owner be denied a right to use their property? You know, use is interesting. We may have a property owner that says, you know, I can't do anything with it now. Well, you might not be able to do what you wanted with it, but you could still make some use of it, right? Does the variance negatively impact the general plan? You know, I would hope that the board understands, but just, you know, applicants would take some time to understand as well how much work goes into the general plan for the city of West Jordan. It is a big undertaking. And so we want to make sure that whatever's proposed and going on doesn't negatively or adversely impact kind of that general plan. So.
Yeah, and the one thing to remember there is that the general plan, the way it should work in municipalities is you have a general plan, which is a general land use document. And everything else is subservient to that general plan. Your utility plans, water, sewer, roads, everything that is designed is based upon that land use document. And say that, as Patrick said, the city goes into a lot of work to do this general plan and the Board of Adjustment, you have a rogue Board of Adjustment that just comes in willy-nilly and you get staff support and you do the instead of 25 lots, you say, oh, well, you think you should do 50 because we do need housing in the state of Utah and we're sympathetic to that. Well, that's where you frustrated the general plan. And now the utility department and the city, you and I, we need to go out and then find additional resources to serve those units. And so that's how you can negatively impact a general plan with a decision because it's everything is based upon that general plan as far as utility, roads, that type of thing. So, and the way that it should be properly done is through the city council because they're ultimately the ones that have to pay for it if they want an increase in density. So that's my 2 cents on the general plan.
Yeah. Water is, you know, utilities, when we talk about utilities, water, right, is such a huge focus for the state and everybody right now. Got to make sure we've got enough water, pipelines,
Well,
sewer.
sustainable growth, right?
Correct. All of it. Yeah.
Important. We don't
very
want to be
important.
like some other Utah cities.
Yep. 100%. So I would have you think of it in this way. Consider facts of the case to be blue. Consider the law to be yellow. and you want to make a lot of green, right? Where they overlap is this analysis. We want to make sure that the facts are present. We flesh out those facts sufficiently. We want to flesh out what the law requires of us as well. And then we kind of want to combine the two to make that green color. So when we analyze these situations, when we look at this, it's not just law requires this, kind of skim through general facts or generalizations and then reach a conclusion. We want to make sure that we state the facts that we're finding, understand the law and what it requires of us to do, and then make sure that we identify how these facts meet the law. And that's where that green color really is some of the most important. Larry, next one. If a variance is ever appealed to the district court, the board's decision will be given deference, so long as there is a record demonstrating that the decision was based on facts and the legal standards were applied, right? So we're talking about the green. So long as you can cover that page and your decision with as much green as possible, the court will give you deference. They'll say, all right, we may not agree, but the board's decision is supportable because they did what they should have. When addressing those variance requests, then be specific. And we kind of talked about that at certain points. Relying on the evidence presented. It's not your jobs to be fact finders. It's not your jobs to say, well, I wish I knew more about this. Applicant bears the burden of proof, not just emotional pleas from owners or from neighbors. Each application and pattern will be unique, should be given full consideration. So again, this is, I think, might go into kind of what you had asked a little bit ago, but this is, deference to the board's decisions, so long as it's supportable in fact and law, and so long as it's not just somebody comes in and says, hey, I'd like a variance, I want to build a home. You guys say, that sounds great, approved, and we move on, right? There's no deference there. You don't know what the facts are. You didn't even apply the law. The district court will not give you deference. They will launch full into it and quite possibly overturn that type of decision. So, the Board of Adjustment is an appellate body, and just like any court or appeals body, nobody likes to be overturned, right? Nobody likes somebody else telling you were wrong. So a lot of this is preventative steps to protect the decisions that you make, so that they hold up on appeal. Again, if you're on the Board of Adjustment for 30 years, you may not see any of these situations, but it's likely that you'll be appealed up to district court, once, twice, whatever. And we want those decisions to hold up. We want the decisions to be great and, like them or not, be based on fact, law, and like I said, covered in this green. So, any questions? I've just been talking and rambling on.
No, this is great. I like this.
On an appeal, I suppose that our analysis is really looked at hard, so our discussions up
Yeah.
here are really critical and important, I think,
Absolutely.
for that reason, I guess.
Yep. Looking at the record, right? What is the record? The record is what's being said right now. All of this is on record, preserved and kept. All the meetings are preserved and kept. And so the things that you look at, the materials, and I know Julie puts them, out to you, when we have a request and stuff beforehand, so that we can look at them and get a feeling for what we're coming into. Really making sure that we come in maybe with a question or two, or understanding how we think these are going to apply, and then being willing to adjust as needs be, I think are very important attributes to being successful. So. I appreciate this. I had told somebody today, I thought, I won't take more than 20, 30 minutes. I should have known. There's jokes to be made about what happens when you give an attorney a microphone, and I will save those for another time, but I appreciate this. I hope it's, you know, at least some food for thought. You know, never, you know, would I think like, oh, it's been said and done. I think one of the things that I love most about these types of settings and proceedings is that every situation is going to be unique. Every situation is going to be different. And, you know, the steps and analysis that you apply will be the same. Essentially, the law will be the same, but the facts are so different that, you know, making green on the page is part of the fun. So, I hope, look forward to working with you guys. I hope you look forward to serving as well on the board. I'll be sure to send out that legal opinion to you as well, so you can just take a peek at it when you need some light reading and get a feel for kind of what, you know, those appeals look like at the next level as well as some of the decisions and things. So anyway, that's all I have for you.
Thank you for your presentation.
thank you.
You can see that you put a lot of work into it, and your enthusiasm is great on this
Thank you,
kind of a
Patrick.
subject,
That's
so
very
thank you
good.
very much. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Is it I make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Meeting adjourned.